Democrats have a habit of doing things from the presidency that they have already said they, meaning the president, doesn't have the right to do, right? Barack Obama did this. Joe Biden has done this. And in one of these instances, well, I guess Nancy Pelosi was the one who actually said Biden doesn't have the authority to do this, but she's a pretty important Democrat. In you had a hearing this morning by the Supreme Court of a case having to do with student loan forgiveness, or the cancellation of debt is really what this is. Loan forgiveness is the politically expedient term. What it really is the Biden administration, because Biden, when he was campaigning for president in 2020, he said he would cancel at least $10,000 of student loan debt for qualified borrowers. And then Biden said, actually, it's going to be $20,000 for those who qualify. And the pandemic has become the excuse here, that they use the HEROES Act, which was a law passed after September 11th that gave the Secretary of Education, among many other things in the law, the ability to use student loan programs so that borrowers were not in a worse position because of that national emergency, or because of a national emergency. So now it is the position of the Biden administration that the post-September 11th HEROES Act allows them to wipe away basically $500 billion of debt. And now, Clay, there are two challenges, or from two directions there have been legal challenges to this. One is from states, one is from individuals. States are saying, hold on a second, by doing this in a number of different capacities, it affects us financially, meaning the states financially. If you to just say, yeah, no more of this money, you don't have to pay it back. Individuals, or one individual has sued that's made its way up as part of this, saying, well, hold on, I have commercial student loan debt, so I don't qualify for the full $20,000. I only can get the $10,000 from the federal government. So there are standing issues of standing that were raised this morning before the court. My sense is, and then they get into major questions doctrine, as in, can the president just be like, you know what, this isn't a minor administrative thing, this is a big deal, and I'm just going to decide, instead of having Congress decide, that you can just say $500 billion of spending, or rather $500 billion of loans, of money owed back to the federal government, just goes away, which really socializes the cost to everybody else in the country. My sense is they're going to get past the standing issue, and you're going to have a 6-3 decision here. And once again, it will be an example of Biden executive overreach that gets slapped down by the court, but no real consequences beyond that. I think it just shows us, Clay, that the attitude of Democrats when they're in power is do as much as you can, even if it's unconstitutional, because it'll take a long time for it to be seen as such, and you get the political benefit in the short term. In this case, basically paying off the voters.
It's exactly what's going on here. I think it's going to be a 6-3 decision. The standing issue, and this is something that if you are a law professor, you would love, like, you dive into it, because basically you have to prove that you can bring a case in front of the court, that you have the standing, that is the way to easily summarize it, to in some way be rectified by an act for the court. And so they are trying to argue, this is probably the strongest actual legal argument, is that there isn't someone who is able, or a state that is able, to bring this challenge. What Joe Biden tried to do is just wipe the slate for $500 billion in student loans and basically shift, because the debt's not going away. He's just taking the debt from the individuals and putting it onto the books of the federal government. And so this process, without any legislative authority, is unconstitutional. It's an overreach. I think that's likely what is going to be happening. When this story happened, Buck, I came on, I said the Supreme Court's going to strike this down. This is how it's going to break down. But what you hit on is, I think, the sort of political calculus that was involved here. Don't miss what happened. Right before the midterms, Joe Biden, knowing that he wanted to drive up young voters' turnout as much as he could, said, I'm giving you an incredible gift. Here's $400 to $500 billion, depending on what estimate you look at, that I'm just taking off of your responsibility. And a bunch of young people went out and they voted for Joe Biden because they said, this is Joe Biden taking care of my generation. And then now it's going to go to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court's going to strike it down. Joe Biden is going to come out, and what is he going to say? This is what happens when you have a conservative Donald Trump appointed Supreme Court. They will not allow me, good old Uncle Joe, to give you young people the debt relief that you deserve. And that's why you have to vote for me in 2024, because we'll take this to Congress and we'll get this passed and we'll deliver that debt relief to you. This is all, the moment it happened, Buck, I said this is a masterful political stroke. It's wildly unconstitutional, but there will be no consequences because they will play it in 22. Maybe it made 20,000, 200,000, 2 million. I don't know. Extra voters go out and be more likely to vote for the Democrat. And then in 2024, he'll come back and say, I tried to do it for you, but that awful Donald Trump and his Supreme Court kept me from doing it for you, but I'll do it for you next time if you vote for me in 24. That's the story here. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's a legal loss looming, but a political win in the making anyway, because ultimately Democrats always run as Santa Claus, a chubby, garrulous fellow who has lots of free goodies to give out to everybody. That is the Democrat approach is we're just going to give you lots of free stuff. There's all this free, and just the big, mean Republicans stand in the way of all the toys we have here in the bag for you. If only we were in charge, everything would be so much better because of all the free stuff. Unfortunately, that works a lot of the time with a lot of people. It's short-term thinking over long-term reality. And with the student loan debt issue, there are so many ways you can come at this. I mean, one of them is, so the people that have already paid off their debts, too bad for you. You waited to buy that house, too bad. You waited to buy that new car, too bad. You should have waited for Uncle Joe Biden to show up and give you taxpayer dollars and to break effectively the contract that people sign when they get this money for college. So that's a big part of it. And then there's all the other debts that people hold. They're the people that forego college altogether so they can work in a trade and not be in debt. I went to undergrad to Clay. I didn't go to grad school. Yeah, because I want to work in media. Sure. Also, I didn't want to run up a $200 and something thousand debt for an MBA from some fancy school and then hope that someone pays me enough to pay it off. So, I looked at this. If someone said you could go to get an MBA for free, I would have probably had a very different feeling about the whole thing. Or even if they were going to tell me tens of thousands of dollars would go toward it, no questions asked.
Yeah, look, I didn't pay off all my student loan debts until I was in my upper 30s, I think. And a large percentage, the data reflects, of these forgiven loans actually are grad school loans. So it's not like somebody who was really struggling to put themselves through. And I'll just add, this will be at least the third direct overturn of unconstitutional action by Joe Biden when it happens, in the last, 6 months, a year? Remember the eviction moratorium? Joe Biden tried to extend it without congressional authority. It was shot down. The COVID shot mandate, again, without congressional authority. He was trying to use OSHA as the opportunity to do that. And now he's trying to use, I think it's worth mentioning, this emergency as defined from the 2001 Act or whatever, but we're not in an emergency starting in May. So the COVID emergency, even by Joe Biden's own definition, effectively ends in May when he said he's going to wave his magic wand and suddenly COVID is gone. So this is going to be 3 straight Trump Supreme Court appointed realities that have kept him from behaving in an unconstitutional fashion.
You laid out all the times that Biden has acted in an unconstitutional fashion, which is another way of saying this is abused executive authority in a way that is unconstitutional, violated the Constitution. Barack Obama had to be overturned by the Supreme Court, his actions as president, 13 times. 13 times the Obama administration took it all the way to the Supreme Court saying, we have the right to do this. And the Supreme Court, which, by the way, was a different court and a more narrowly divided one than even this one, said, no, you can't actually do that. Like, you can't tell the Senate when the Senate is in session just because you feel like it because you're president. I mean, there are a whole range of things.
This is one that I think Trump does not get enough attention for and praise. He went 3 for 3 with arguably 3 moonshots on his Supreme Court appointments. I mean, I really do mean that, because if you look at how squishy some of the Republican appointees have been in terms of what you can rely on them doing, Trump stepped into the batter's box and went yard 3 straight times. Now, you can still quibble with some of the individual decisions at times, but these are 3 studs he put onto the Supreme Court.
Trump gets, for anybody that I know and talk to about this, across the board, I have not met anybody who just, Trump, all things considered, gets an A+ on judges, which is a big deal.
And it doesn't get talked about enough, and I think he deserves tremendous praise for this, because that court is going to last longer than a lot of our lives, and they're going to make a lot of big differences.